Now, normally I have the Garfield the cat approach to Mondays in that I don't like Mondays, but this Monday, well, it's an exception as today the Toronto Blue Jays kick off the series of their 2023 season as the Texas Rangers are in town for a huge 4-game series that the Blue Jays have a chance to use to really solidify their spot in the playoffs. Today on the Locked On Blue Jay podcast, we'll get set for this absolutely massive series. I'm excited about it. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays. Yes, indeed, been Locked On Toronto Blue Jay baseball my entire life. The Locked On Blue Jay podcast, of course, has been around for a few years, previously hosted by Ben Schulman. So shout out to Ben Schulman and Dan Schulman, right? That family, man, as good as it gets with the broadcasting. So this is my first year hosting the Locked On Blue Jay podcast. And of course, the Locked On Blue Jay podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to remind you, of course, all Toronto Blue Jay action this season available for you to take in on SiriusXM. If you're taking in today's Locked On Blue Jays podcast on our YouTube page, I want to say hello and thank you for that. Hit that like, leave that comment, hit that subscribe if you haven't already, please and thank you. And to the everydayers making the Locked On Blue Jay podcast your first podcast listen every day, thank you so much as well. Please hit that 5-star review. Now, a month ago, we knew that the Toronto Blue Jays just needed to finish ahead of someone in the AL West. I mean, not Oakland, right? Obviously, everyone's finishing ahead of Oakland, but you know what I mean. Of those three teams, Seattle, Texas, and Houston needed to finish ahead of at least one of those three teams to make the playoffs. But I don't think we thought it would be the Texas Rangers, right? I don't think it would be the Texas Rangers. At that time, you take your mind's eye back to about a month ago here, the Rangers were a game and a half, just a game and a half behind Baltimore for the best record in the American League, a game and a half of the 1 seed. But goodness, they've been in an amazing free fall, and the Blue Jays can use this series to put themselves in an extremely good spot to be sure they finish ahead of the Rangers in the wildcard standings. Texas Rangers just 500 baseball since the All-Star break, and over their last 21 games, what's this free fall we're talking about here? Well, how about over their last 21 games? Just 5 wins. My goodness. In their last 10 road games, just 3 wins in there. And to make it all significantly worse, one of their better hitters, Adolis Garcia, 34 home runs. He led the league with 100 RBIs. He's since been passed now. Kyle Tucker's at 101 RBIs in the American League, but 34 home runs and 100 RBIs. Adolis Garcia out. He's on the injured list right now. I don't know if you saw that take place a couple days ago. He jammed his leg trying to make a catch up against the fence in right field, and he knew something was up. I don't know if you saw it, but he starts violently punching the ground. I mean, he is extremely upset, extremely frustrated. He could tell something big was up there, and the Texas Rangers are going to be without that slugger in the middle of that lineup. Now, how about the bullpen? I mean, you talk about the tale of two bullpens in this series. My goodness. Texas has 27 saves on the season. The next lowest of the American League wildcard contenders, that's Houston and Seattle. They've got 40 and 41 saves. And of the 29 saves that, of the 27 saves, that Texas has, well, how about 29 blown saves for the Texas Rangers? That's the most in baseball. Blue Jays are fourth best, which is 16 blown saves. So, man, two completely different bullpens here. I think the Toronto Blue Jay fan base probably has significantly more confidence when their bullpen is called on compared to this Texas Rangers. I mean, imagine having 27 saves and 29 blown saves. Imagine having more blown saves. My goodness, our entire Blue Jay fan base would be looking like me, right, with the hair pulled out from the frustration. My goodness. Now, all time, the Blue Jays and Rangers have met a lot. The Blue Jays, 233 wins, 220 losses. The last time the Blue Jays had a losing season against Texas, you have to go all the way back to 2012. And since that 2012 losing season, the Blue Jays have dominated Texas to the tune of 43 and 25. That includes 21 and 11 here at the Rogers Center. But now, do need to note, right? It is worth noting that these two teams did get together for a series, a 3-gamer in Texas back in June. Now, Texas did take 2 out of those 3 games. Marcus Semien leads the league in runs, leads the league in hits. Well, the Blue Jays really tamed Semien in that first series. He had 2 doubles in that series in the 3 games, but those are his only 2 hits in 12 at-bats. Corey Seager is the one to faire attention. He's the one to be very concerned with. You know he's a superstar hitter. Well, he did it to the Blue Jays in that series as well. How about 7 for 13? 3 of those 7 hits were a double, and he had a home run in there as well. Oh, boy. We know Corey Seager's awesome. How did some of the Blue Jays hitters fare in that series? Well, George Springer had 4 hits in that June series, and we know that since that 0 for 35, fiasco, whatever that was, that record, one of the all-time worst slumps we've ever seen. Since then, George Springer's hitting over 300, and he's getting a lot of big hits. George Springer has really brought the bat around lately. I'm loving it. Bo Bichette was just 3 for 12 in that series, but all 3 hits were doubles. And Dalton Varsho, 3 for 10 in that series, had a home run in that series. And over the last month, Dalton Varsho has a 345 on base percentage. That's miles. I mean, that's eons. That's so much better than what we had seen from him. And a 779 OPS. 779 OPS from Dalton Varsho, considering the defense he's been playing over the last month as well. Dalton Varsho's contributing. Now, Vlad, in that 3-game series at Texas, had just 2 singles the entire season. Clearly, he's going to need to be much better. Brandon Belt didn't play. He was on the injured list. Kevin Kiermaier was 0 for 7 in that series. My goodness, obviously going to need to be better. Whit Merrifield was just 3 for 12 in that Texas series. Now, since August 1st, Whit Merrifield is hitting 225 with a 248 on base percentage. That is atrocious. And just a 558 OPS. It's September 11th. This is all the way back from the beginning of August. So a big sample size. And over those last 5-6 weeks, 24 strikeouts, just 5 walks. And one of those walks was intentional, by the way. And he's grounded into 5 double plays since the beginning of August. My goodness. Whit Merrifield, I mean, every day is known. I had him pegged from day one as he needs to be the X factor for the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays. And he had been that. He needs to get back to that. My goodness, he was coming into August. Whit Merrifield was on pace to have the best season he's ever had in his career. He's now on pace to have the 6th best season. I mean, it has been a free fall for what Merrifield need to get that going. 2-hit win. Where are you at? 2-hit win. Where are you at? Going to need to see you in this series. Now, Alejandro Kirk. Well, Texas pitched him very well. He was 0 for 5 in that series. Obviously, Alejandro Kirk going to be catching at least 2 of these 3 games, if not all 3. So Kirky, of course, going to have to be better at the plate. Now, take your mind's eye back. What did we see in that series? That what needs to continue and what needs to change here? Well, game 1, you had Leody Taveras hit a solo home run to give Texas a 1-0 lead. Then Martin Perez would walk Matt Chapman in the top of the 5th inning to lead off the top of the 5th, and Danny Jansen would hit a 2-run home run. Neither one of them will be playing today. Now, in that game, Gausman went 6 really good innings. Eric Swanson would strand a runner on second in the 7th. Meza would get some outs in the 8th, but would give way to Jordan Romano with 2 outs in the 8th. The Romano would get a 4-out save. He closed the 8th with a strikeout, then went strikeout, ground out in the 9th inning. It was one of the better performances from Jordan Romano, and it was against these Texas Rangers. Now, all told, I think you remember that Tim Richards, he made 3 total starts as the opener when Alek Manoah was sent to Florida. Well, the second game of those openers was actually game 2 of this series in the Texas series. And Richards as the starter was excellent the first time out. That was the home opener against Minnesota. He was excellent the third time out as the the opener at home against the Giants. But this game against Texas, oh boy, Richards opened for 3 innings, went 3 up, 3 down in the first inning, went 3 up, 3 down in the third inning. But that second inning, he would issue a leadoff walk and then allow back-to-back home runs. That would make that game 3-0 Texas. They would never look back as they won that game 4-2. And then the third and final game of this series, that was Spencer Horowitz's major league debut. And you talk about a game where things went wrong, went off the rails. My goodness. Spencer Horowitz, in the top of the 3rd, he gets an RBI ground out for his first major league RBI. At the time, in the 3rd inning, that makes the score 6-0 Blue Jays in the 3rd inning. By the time the 4th inning would end, it was down to 6-5. By the time the 5th inning would end, they had rallied off Nate Pearson in the 5th inning. I think 4 of the first 5 batters would reach base. Pearson was in to relieve Chris Bassett, and Texas would score 3 more to take an 8-6 lead. So a 6-0 lead in the 3rd is now an 8-6 deficit 2 innings later, and then Texas would add on 3 more in the bottom of the 7th off of Adam Simber and Mitch White en route to an 11-7 win, and Texas would take that series 2-1. Now, Texas taking that series 2-1, of course, could be big here, because if they can split this series with the Blue Jays, then they would be 4-3 against the Jays. So if they finish tied for that 3rd and final wildcard spot with the Jays, it would be Texas with the tiebreaker. So again, huge series right here for the Toronto Blue Jays, and a lot more coming up today to get set for that series with the Texas Rangers here in the 6 for 4 games right here on the Locked On Blue Jay Podcast Network. And a reminder, of course, all 4 of those games will be available for you on SiriusXM. First, I did want to mention about the best place, in my opinion. I mean, I've used the app a few times and will continue to do so for my tickets, and that is the Game Time app. Buying tickets to your favorite sporting event, well, your favorite event, period. I mean, it shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, the music, the comedy, the theater, you name it, near you. With killer deals on last minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and get hyped for the fun you're about to have. And we talk about that guarantee. Well, the Game Time guarantee means you're always going to get the best price, because if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. I mean, it's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get the images of your seats before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive, and you buy the tickets in the matter of seconds. It's literally 2 taps and you're all set. And the tickets are sent right to your phone, so you don't have to dig through your email. It's very easy to use. That's why I keep using it. Very easy to use. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB. That's going to get you $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Now, again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now, what do the pitching matchups look for these 4 big games? Well, as of now, Texas is undecided on Monday's starter. Could they go a bullpen game? We'll see what Texas rolls out there on Monday, but we know it's going to be Chris Bassitt for the Blue Jays. More on that in a moment. How about Tuesday night's pitching matchup? Is this a doozy? Max Scherzer versus Hyunjin Ryu. Holy moly. Of course, Texas picked up Scherzer at the trade deadline. They also picked up Jordan Montgomery at the trade deadline. He'll oppose Yusei Kikuchi on Wednesday. And Montgomery hasn't really worked out yet. They've only won 2 of his 7 starts. And then another good-looking pitching matchup, at the very least on paper, because Nathan Eovaldi has struggled a little bit here since coming back from injury, but Nathan Eovaldi versus Kevin Gausman in the finale on Thursday. Wow. Some big-time pitching matchups in this series. Now, speaking of pitching, these are 2 American League teams. So in the American League, which pitcher has the most wins? Well, that's the Hound on the mound. That's Chris Bassitt, 14-7, 3.69 ERA. He's had 18 quality starts. That ties him with Kevin Gausman for 5th best in all of baseball. Is that good? Wow. Blue Jays 17-12 in Chris Bassitt starts, including winning his last 2 starts. And in those 2 starts, they were both Bassitt gems. 8 innings and 8 innings, so 16 total innings his last 2 starts. In fact, he comes into this game 9th in innings pitched in all of Major League Baseball, and probably going to be in the top 5 after tonight's game. Has Chris Bassitt been a workhorse? Has he been doing it for the Toronto Blue Jays? Wow. And in those 16 innings pitched, his last 2 timeouts, how about just 1 run allowed on just 10 hits, 1 walk allowed versus 10 strikeouts. And the offense has somehow been inspired. Hey, the offense is coming through for the Blue Jays. They've scored 7 runs each of the last 2 times Chris Bassitt has been out there. At the Rogers Center, oh boy, this game has so many glass half full aspects for the Toronto Blue Jays. Chris Bassitt at the Rogers Center, 7-4, 2.80 ERA. Since the All-Star break, Chris Bassitt, 6-2, 2.83 ERA. In night games, Chris Bassitt, 10-5, 2.84 ERA. My goodness. And this is a guy, Chris Bassitt, who's, we all love Danny Jansen, but Bassitt's not going to miss Jansen. Bassitt this season has had 7 games where he's thrown to either Danny Jansen or Tyler Heineman. His ERA in those 7 games is over 9. Pardon me. Opponents are hitting 356. Goodness, against Chris Bassitt when the game is being called, or not being called because he does a lot of his own calling there, but when he's pitching to either Jansen or Heineman. Well, how about Alejandro Kirk? Bassitt has thrown 24 times. 24 times Alejandro Kirk's been his battery mate. Bassitt's ERA is 2.42 with Kirk behind the behind the plate, and opponents are hitting 200, just 200 versus the Hound on the mound when Alejandro Kirk is right there as his backstop, as his battery mate. Wow. Chris Bassitt has allowed just 7 of his 25 home runs this season at Rogers Center. A fly ball pitcher moving to a ballpark where fences have been moved in. Everydayers know we had our eye on that, right? We wondered if that could be interesting or could that get problematic. Well, he's been absolutely fantastic. In fact, opponents hitting just 185 versus Chris Bassitt at the Rogers Center this season. Just wow on top of wow on top of wow on top of wow for Chris Bassitt. My gosh. Now, everydayers will know We've looked at Bassitt's struggles all season long versus lefties, but as the season has gone on, very true to say he's gotten so much better versus lefties. Remember, teams were just stacking. Anybody that had a heartbeat in their system that was a lefty, they were getting called up. They were in the lineup against Bassitt. They were just throwing lefty after lefty at him. Well, being the veteran he is, he's adjusted. Now, Bassett pitched, he pitched in that finale back in that June series, that 11-7 Rangers win, and he was pitching to Kirk early in that game. But if you remember that game, Kirk got hit by a pitch in the, what was at the top of the second. He had to leave the game, and when Jansen came in, that's when Bassett got rocked. 5 runs. Now, just 3 were earned. There was a Kevin Kiermaier error in there. 7 hits and 3 walks in just 3 2/3 innings. So, I mean, Bassett, truth be told, we know Bassett's had about 4 or 5 starts this season where he did blow up. He absolutely got rocked, and in particular got rocked early. Well, truth be told, that Texas start was one of those. Who knows if it could have been different if Alejandro Kirk got to stay in the game. But and what else do we know about Chris Bassitt in his entire career against Texas? Well, absolute feast or famine, like the dictionary definition of feast or famine versus this Rangers team. The Rangers outfielders, you have Travis Jankowski, you have Leotis Tavares, and Ezekiel Duran. They're a combined 8 for 10. Holy cow, they've dominated Chris Bassitt. Corey Seager, you have to watch out for him. He's 2 for 6 with a pair of doubles against Bassitt in his career. But how about the other significant hitters in this Texas lineup? The Mitch Garvers, the Robbie Grossmans, the Jonah Himes, the Nathaniel Lowe's, the Marcus Semien. I mean, Heim and Semien, by the way, are both in there. They're both all-stars, by the way. We know how good Semien is as well. Those 5 are combined 0 for 34 with 13 strikeouts against the Hound on the mound. Absolute domination. Garver, Grossman, Heim, Lowe, and Semien, some of the who's who, except Seager, right? But most of the who's who in this Rangers lineup, my gosh, 0 for 34 with 13 strikeouts versus Chris Bassitt. Wow. I really hope you're enjoying today's Locked On Blue Jays podcast episodes. We're about to turn our attention to what we need to watch on the out-of-town scoreboard tonight. Now, I did want to talk about the fact, of course, we know the MLB playoffs are right around the corner, which means that clock is ticking on your chance to win 100 times your cash on daily fantasy baseball. Is your own fantasy baseball team struggling? Well, fantasy baseball has never been more exciting than it is now with the young studs in the league, the Betts, the Acunas, the Otanis, right? Hopefully the Vlads too, right? Bo, of course, yes. And you can pick more or less on stats for these stars like home runs, hits, strikeouts, and more for up to 100 times payout on Sleeper. You get the picks right, and you could win big. So just because your own fantasy baseball team isn't doing well, how about daily fantasy? Sleeper's got it for you here. The Sleeper app has a really good group and team chat function, very easy to use. You can copy and paste your team's picks easily, and your entries can be made in under a minute. It's very quick and easy to use. And if you use the promo code Locked On, well, you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Now, terms and conditions do apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Check out Sleeper today. So we know how important this Blue Jays Rangers series is. But of course, out of town scoreboard, got to keep our eye on Seattle, got to keep our eye on Houston as well. The Yankees and the Red Sox actually open a series here. Both of them sort of hanging around. I don't really think, not really, but I guess both have games left with the Blue Jays where theoretically, if they were to sweep those games, I guess they could, reassert themselves as a problem, as a thorn in the side for the Blue Jays down the stretch. I personally, I just don't think so, but we'll keep an eye on that series. I guess, from afar at the very least here, but really we know that Seattle series and that Houston series need to keep an eye on those as well. Now, speaking of Seattle Mariners, they just finished another 10-game road trip. And I say another because a few weeks back, they also had a 10-game road trip. And in that 10-gamer, they lost the first game and they lost the last game. But in the 8 middle games, they won all 8 of those games. How about an 8-2 road trip? Included in that was a 3-game sweep at Houston. And that 8-2 road trip, that propelled the Mariners right back into the thick of the playoff race. I was hoping for a 3-7 or a 4-6 to pretty much eliminate, not eliminate, but really put Seattle in a rear view. They'd be in the same spot as Boston or New York right now, where they're sort of not, mathematically eliminated, but they would need so much to go right. Well, that's not what they need right now. They positioned themselves with a fantastic road trip. Again, 8-2. How impressive is that to get themselves right back in that race? Now, then they've had another 10-game road trip since. It just ended yesterday. significantly different than that first one. The same in that they won the first game and the last game of the road trip, the same there, but the 8 games in the middle, they went just 3-5. A losing road trip. The Blue Jays over that same span were able to gain 4 games on the Texas Rangers, or sorry, bigger pardon, on the Seattle Mariners. So the Blue Jays, last couple of weeks have been able to get right back in the thick of things with Seattle. Now, certainly worth noting, Seattle is at home now. They're at home all week long. They've got 3 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday against the lowly LA Angels. But then on the weekend, off Thursday, then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, here come the heavyweight Dodgers to town. So hopefully at best, this is going to be a 3-3 week for Seattle. Now, the Angels had won 4 of the 6 games that they had played this season with Seattle. But I say had because these two teams had a 4-game series just a few weeks back, and the Mariners won all 4 of those games. And with Reed Detmers and Patrick Sandoval, that's who the Angels are going to throw out there as the starter on Monday and Tuesday. Both are lefties. Seattle's done well versus lefties this season, and Seattle has absolutely dominated losing teams this season. So not a whole lot of cause for optimism in this series. We may end up, we may need to think here that we're going to be happy if the Angels can even get 1 game over the next few days in Seattle. And with Luis Castillo, absolute stud. Don't Toronto Blue Jay fans know that, right? Remember the wild card series last year, but absolute stud Luis Castillo going for the Mariners on Wednesday. Then in the finale there of that series, you have to think that if we are going to get an upset, the Angels are going to get one of these games in Seattle. It's going to have to be tonight or tomorrow night. Now, even though the Houston Astros are back in first place in the AL West, it's still such a close division that any sort of poor stretch could land the Astros right back in the wild card outlook. Now, currently barely ahead of the Blue Jays, but as the Jays have a tough series versus the Rangers, we see the Mariners have an easy series with the Angels, while the Astros also have an easy series. How about the easiest, actually, of anybody involved here is they've got the lowly Oakland A's in town. Houston is hosting Oakland on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. The Astros will have Framber Valdez going on Monday, Justin Verlander going on Tuesday, Hunter Brown going on Wednesday. So they're 1, 2, and 3 versus a team as bad as the A's. So just like, we might have to consider ourselves lucky to see Seattle lose 1 game over these next 3. We'd have to consider ourselves downright fortunate if the Astros don't just flat out sweep away the Oakland A's over these 3 games, right? My goodness. That's a wrap for Monday's Locked On Blue Jay podcast episode. Reminder that today's Blue Jays Rangers tilt, of course, available on SiriusXM. Now, for now, keep it locked on the Locked On Podcast Network and check out Sully hosting Locked On MLB. Go Jays, go. Huge series. To state the obvious, would be great to get, out with a win, to start this off with a win, especially considering how good the Hound on the mound has been lately. Go Jays, go. Come on with it tonight. We'll talk tomorrow.